Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Sally Pinto and I'm from the Yonkers Newark Neighborhood Naturally Occurring Retirement Community. We launched back in January of 2020 and we're here to serve seniors 60 plus in Northeast Yonkers. We have lots of fun programs and activities, and we also have a lot of resources for you as well. Our programs include meditation chair yoga, body mind fitness, bingo, and any other programs that you might be interested, like arts and gardening. We have our resource specialist, Alexa Smith, who can help you with finding services and activities out there for you, as well as our nurse, Barbara Simone, who can help answer your health-related questions. We're here for you, we're here for our community, and we look forward to seeing you in our programs. Enjoy.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alexa Smith, the resource specialist with the Yonkers Newark. I'm here to help with application assistance, referrals for home delivered meals, and transportation services will be coming soon. We also offer Zoom activities and Zoom programs. And if you have any other questions or concerns, I'm here to help. Thank you so much and enjoy the program.
Welcome. I'm Barbara Simone, registered nurse. I recently retired from Westchester County's Health Department as a public health nurse. I am now here to try to assist you with any medical or preventive care issues. Enjoy this program, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, C. And thank you, everyone, for joining us, for taking the time and joining us this evening. Like Sally mentioned, it's really, for me, it has been a pleasure to be able to present these series of programs, and this will be the last for this season, but we will be coming back in the fall, so we're looking forward to that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and today we're going to present on a topic that, our program is called Dementia Conversations. Let's just hide these control. 1 second. And of course, please let me know if there are any problems with your audio, or if, just send me a comment in the chat, and I'm sure Sally, C, or myself will be able to catch that. And like I mentioned earlier, we are going to reserve some time at the end of the program to go over any questions, any comments that you may have. So please feel free that throughout our time together to put any of that on the chat, or if you want to save your question and feel comfortable enough, asking it yourself, we at the end, we're going to give you the opportunity to be unmuted and ask your question. So once again, welcome to our Dementia Conversations program. And this program has been designed to help us talk with really our entire family, including the person that is displaying the signs of dementia, about some of the challenging and often uncomfortable topics related to Alzheimer's and dementia. And as we all know, these discussions may not be easy to have for you or for the person that's experiencing these changes of functioning. So there is that fear of hurting the ones that we love, right, that are facing these challenges related to aging and dementia, and are being forced to deal with difficult family dynamics. So you may try to wait until the time is right to have these conversations, but in reality, that time rarely occurs, right? So the sooner these discussions can take place, the better. This way, the wishes of the person with dementia can be included as much as possible, and really unexpected situations can be avoided in the future. The changing needs of the person often signal that it's time to have a talk, right? So we have heard from many people, caregivers and family members, who tells us that some of the most difficult conversations they have with their parents or loved ones or any other family member are about going to the doctor to get a diagnosis or medical care, deciding when it's necessary to stop driving, and making plans for managing finances and legal documents to be sure the person's wishes are carried out and the costs of the future care are covered. Right. So we want to keep in mind that as we talk about each of these conversations, we offer a variety of approaches. Not all of these will be appropriate for each person, right? The approach that will work best for you will involve you customizing it to fit the needs and preferences of the person in your family, your loved one, right? So they definitely have to be customized because this is a very unique disease, right? So in today's program, we're going to share some tips for breaking the ice and having these difficult conversations around some of the most common issues that arises when someone is showing signs of Alzheimer's or dementia. We're also going to help you plan ahead and build a care team that works and communicates well to reduce some of the stress that can accompany a disease like Alzheimer's. Also give you the opportunity to hear from people who are dealing with similar issues. And these individuals will share how they handle these challenging conversations, right? And of course, as always, we're going to try our best to connect you with helpful resources to enhance the quality of life for everyone involved. Often we find ourselves avoiding or ourselves out of different difficult conversations around these issues for several reasons, right? Sometimes our family members say they don't need our help, right? We assume that other family members who live closer are taking care of things. Or we might fear that we might take away the person's sense of independence. Therefore, we might not consider ourselves a caregiver. Or the family can disagree about whether or not there is really a problem with the person, right, with their loved one. So of course, to have a successful conversation, these should be done the sooner rather than later, right? We don't want to wait for a crisis to happen before having these conversations. You can actually avoid a crisis by talking about the issues and taking action in advance, right? By talking early in the disease process, you're going to be able to hear directly from the person with dementia about their wishes, while the person can still contribute and be a part of the planning process. And despite the difficulty of these conversations, they need to take place so that we ensure that the person's safety and well-being are being considered, right? So successful conversations start with being prepared in advance, right? So we want to develop a plan for how to finesse these conversations, right? What is the best way to introduce this topic? We want to try to be gentle and minimize the resistance from our loved ones. So the use of finesse really goes beyond honesty, right? It involves understanding how difficult this conversation can be and thinking about how best to gently position the discussion for a positive outcome. You want to also consider that what you will do regardless of how the person responds, right? So for example, you want to ask the person whether he or she, they want to know if they have noticed any changes in their functioning, right? So in most cases, the person will say yes, right? And this gives you the opportunity to have that discussion, to begin the discussion. But if he or she says no, that he or she would not want to know about what you've noticed, you want to focus on the fears that accompany these changes and how important it is to talk about the changes openly, right? So the actual conversation about the changes you have noticed may need to take place in separate conversations, right? It's also important that you take notes about the changes that you see, right? Begin observing and take note of examples of behaviors that are concerning to you. Take notes after you see something of concern so that you can accurately talk about what you've noticed. You want to write things down so that you don't forget the important points that you want to cover. And you want to bring these notes with you when you have that conversation. And you want to be prepared to talk about your own feelings, right? You want to use I statements and try to avoid any suggestion of blame or criticism of the person, because it's most likely that they will get defensive or angry. And you want to be gentle in your discussion, right? And we've mentioned this in past programs. You want to be gentle with your discussion. You want to keep the person's feelings in mind. And you want to avoid having the person with changes feel ganged up on, right? It may also be a good idea to practice in advance, right? Perhaps rehearsing talking about these sensitive topics with other family members will help you feel more comfortable when you have to have this actual conversation, right? So consider possible solutions to offer during the conversation with your loved one. And you want to initiate the conversation at a place and time when the person is relaxed, well rested, and comfortable. You want to sit close to the person, use empathy, and speak from your heart about your concerns. When someone in your life exhibits changes in thinking or behavior, it's important to be aware that they could be signs of Alzheimer's, or maybe it's signs of another type of dementia, right? There are changes that are typical of aging, such as perhaps taking longer to remember names or needing a reminder about how to use the remote control. But you may start to notice issues that go beyond the typical aging process, right? Like that the individual is getting lost in familiar places, withdrawing from social functions, asking the same questions repeatedly, or forgetting recent events. People with dementia typically first recognize signs that have to do with forgetting how to do things that they used to do with ease, right? Maybe managing their money, remembering appointments, or cooking their favorite recipes, right? Following instructions. So conversations can go more smoothly if reference is made to these changes rather than those that the person has not noticed in themselves. So sometimes a person may be reluctant, right? Fearful or angry when you try to get them to seek help. And that's understandable, right? This can be because of their feelings about the disease or the effects of the disease itself. It can also reflect their cultural traditions, beliefs, or stigma about the disease. But we have some tips and tools that can help you get that individual to the doctor, right? And it can feel awkward to approach someone about these changes that you've noticed, but many times the person has already noticed these changes in themselves and they do have some concern. So the person may be afraid, and denial is really one of the most basic ways that we all have to protect ourselves from feeling overwhelmed, right? So the changes might be due to something other, they could be other than Alzheimer's and dementia. So acknowledging that can perhaps help the person agree to take action and go to the doctor, right? So now we're going to hear from Donna about the importance of having this conversation.
I think you have to be honest. I think that's the important thing with it. To get a loved one to the doctor, I think you just need to be candid and honest of what are you trying to do. We're trying to understand what we're up against. It's just so important to do that, because you can't battle something that you don't know what you're battling. Again, it may not have been Alzheimer's, it could have been depression, it could have been so many other things. And guess what? There's other things you can do to take care of those issues as well. But that's what you need to be able to do. You can't
Right. So
ignore
it's
something
important
that's
to
not
get the
going to go
person to the
away.
doctor to see if the changes they're having are due to Alzheimer's or something else together, right? There may be treatments available that can help the person, whether the diagnosis is Alzheimer's or something different, right? But the person can't receive treatment until they've seen a doctor. So you can be honest with the person with symptoms about the fact that, this medical determination needs to be made in order to receive the best care. So suggesting a doctor's visit can be all that's needed to get the ball rolling. And other times, just being honest and direct isn't enough, and the person needs more support or direction. And here are some ideas that may help, right? You want to use words that are most comfortable for the person, right? So be aware that the person may be sensitive to particular words such as Alzheimer's. For example, you can say, let's talk with the doctor about the fact that you're having more trouble doing some things that you used to do, rather than, we need to have you see a doctor to do an assessment for Alzheimer's disease, right? You have to set the tone. So we also need to let the person know that it's, perhaps suggesting their annual wellness visit, right? The annual wellness visit, which has been offered at no charge by Medicare since January of 2011, is a visit for developing or updating a personalized prevention plan that can help prevent disease and disability. And this exam includes an examination of the patient's cognitive and behavioral changes that may indicate a form of dementia like Alzheimer's disease. So many older adults have not heard of this benefit, but taking advantage of it can be a way to get the person to have their cognition evaluated. Also, perhaps, pair going to the doctor's office with an enjoyable outing, right? You may want to suggest going to see the doctor and then doing something enjoyable together, like having lunch at a favorite spot or taking a walk in a park. You also want to invite the family to communicate any concerns and questions to the doctor. Whether you're able to be there for the appointment or not, you can prepare a list of your concerns and questions and provide that information to the doctor before the appointment, right? Because of doctor-patient confidentiality and HIPAA regulations, the doctor will not be able to speak with you about the patient without signing a release. But if your family member agrees to it, it can be very helpful to get a signed release of information that could allow the doctor to communicate directly with you. And the release can be signed at the doctor's office. And if they're still reluctant, you can try using what we call a therapeutic fib. There may be times when the person with symptoms is extremely reluctant to see a doctor regardless of all the attempts that you may have used. So people with Alzheimer's often experience a reduced ability to use good judgment and make good decisions. So sometimes this contributes to the person's reluctance to go to the doctor. So in these situations, the person's safety and care, of course, they come first, and you may need to utilize a technique called the therapeutic fib to get the person to visit the doctor's office. So some family members or friends may tell the person that a doctor's visit is required, maybe by the insurance company, in order to authorize a prescription refill, renew a policy. And sometimes evoking this outside authority can help the visit seem less like a criticism of the person and his or her current level of functioning. So the resistance may be reduced, right? As we have heard from others, having a conversation about driving may be one of the first difficult conversations families need to have after a diagnosis. So you may notice signs that your family member's driving has changed. Perhaps they're having more accidents, they're getting more tickets for moving violations or things that are more subtle, like perhaps you see new scrapes on the car, the garage, or You may have even seen the person make mistakes while you are in the car with them. So even though many of us will need to, of course, stop driving at some point as we get older, people are often reluctant to consider the issue because they're afraid to relinquish their independence, right? So denial that anything is wrong can allow a dangerous situation to continue, but dealing with the issue early can help ease that transition. So we're going to hear from Chris, who's going to tell us about how this happened in his family.
There's no exact answer on this is when you stop driving. You could tell when coming up to an intersection, as an example, the ability to understand what's going on around you was starting to deteriorate a little bit. Being on the highway with cars on both sides becomes a little bit more difficult. And first and foremost, the safety of everybody in the car as well as other drivers on the road. You think about that and you want to make sure you're not putting anybody in danger. But then the difficult part is telling your dad, who you love, and you know he loves driving and he's used to it, that he can no longer do that. But then even then, taking the keys away full time was very difficult. The doctor was very helpful and just saying, medically, you can't do this anymore. But my mother had the hardest time with this because she knew how much this was going to hurt him as well. And this is one of the first things that we had to deal with as a family when it came to telling my dad that he had to stop doing something because of this disease. That meant a lot to him.
Right. So, although some people with the early stages of dementia may continue to drive after a diagnosis, they do need to discuss their driving fitness with a doctor. They need to monitor their driving ability with the help of their family, change their driving habits to compensate for those changes, and really just prepare really for an eventual retirement from driving. And as Chris mentioned, this could be an extremely, difficult conversation to have. So whether the changes in driving are due to Alzheimer's or not, some ideas that people have found helpful when discussing this sensitive topic is, one is to plan ahead before an accident occurs, right? So before changes in the ability to drive are seen, you want to talk to the fact that the person will need to stop driving at some point. So many families find it helpful to have an open discussion and develop an agreement about how the person will like to recognize that, it's time for them to stop driving. So that may help. That could be an idea. You may want to express your concern about specific changes that you notice. So you want to let the person know that you care about them, that you support them, and reinforce that that's the reason for your concern, right? So you want to use specific examples to show that these are real problems. So you may say, last week, you did something really different. Here's what happened that concerned me, right? So you want to be very specific. You also want to appeal to the person's sense of responsibility and concern for others, right? You can say, I know that you wouldn't want an accident to happen and for you or someone else to get hurt. Sometimes appealing to that sense of responsibility could trigger that and they may agree to something. So if you anticipate that the person may resist having the conversation about driving, there are ways to make it easier. And Sheila will talk to us about how she approached this subject.
Some tips on having the conversation is pointing out, especially for my father, the potential danger to others that it may cause if he's behind the wheel. And just talking about it from the standpoint that this is not only the best thing for you, but this is also the best thing for others around you. And these are some of the alternatives, making sure that this is what's going to happen, having a plan. If mom can't take you, then Uncle Thomas or some, will be here to take you, and we will make sure that you're getting out of the house and that you're doing some things. So, presenting the bad news, but then also presenting the plan And for my
Right.
father, that's really,
So
really important to have a
having
plan.
that plan in place, lets the person know that arrangements are being made to allow them to continue to go places and still do things with others. So establishing a plan for alternate transportation in advance is important. So you want to make sure to include transportation to places that will help the person maintain that social connection and hobbies, such as perhaps going to a store, appointments, church. So when you talk to the person, you want to provide that reassurance that you want to help maintain their lifestyle and that those needs have been included as part of the plan, right? So you just don't want to have the conversation. You also want to often offer them a plan and an alternative way of getting around. So that may help as well. And you may also want to incorporate the voice of an esteemed professional and have empathy, right? Perhaps asking a physician to write a letter or a prescription stating that the person must not drive, just as Chris discussed in the video. You want to use empathy in your conversation and think about ways to foresee and minimize the person's sense of loss, right? You want to consider talking about this from the standpoint of retiring from driving rather than giving it up, right? So there's a big difference. And Wendy is going to talk about a key component to making this conversation a successful one.
Talking to somebody about stopping driving, I think it's most important to understand that that is tied to someone's independence more than most things. And so by saying you can't do this anymore is like telling the person, it's like ripping away their independence. And that doesn't feel good for anybody. I know that I've always tried to put myself in that situation. What would I think if someone was saying this to me? You don't get to do this anymore. And how would I feel? And how would I want somebody to talk to me about this? And so if you try to I think sometimes too many people try to approach it as, very punitive. And I'm doing what's right for you. So why don't you understand, without really turning the tables and putting themselves in that position, understanding, how helpless that feels to take those things away. It's important to be thoughtful.
So
about
just
what
like
that
Wendy
experience is like
mentioned,
for
it's
the
important
individual.
to respect the person's sense of independence, right? While helping them understand that you are concerned and that these issues need to be discussed and addressed together. And one of the ways that we all provide ourselves with choices that maintain our independence is by making legal and financial plans for our future. Right, so many families do this only to be taken by surprise when dementia enters the picture. Right, so as medical and long-term care costs in the US, they're rising. Families may need to step in and provide both care and help with the person's finances. So now we're going to hear from Chris again regarding this aspect.
Financially, this disease will increase the cost of living. It's just a fact. So planning for those extra costs is that much more important than what you were planning for before. And so you have to review everything that's in place, see what changes need to be made, both legally and financially, and you have to monitor that.
Currently, we
forward
have
afterwards, too.
about 26% of Americans that are caring for someone with Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia and report having at least one financial impact, right? So changes in plans will need to be made and monitored on an ongoing basis. It's always good to review existing documents to make sure that they're current. But once there is an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis, plans that were put in place years before may need to change, right? So care partners, caregivers need to update their forms since the person with dementia may have been named as power of attorney prior to the diagnosis. So that's a very important step. Some people may have plans in place, but it's still uncomfortable, right, to discuss financial status with someone. So you may also feel reluctant to do anything that may come, across as intrusive. So making a legal and financial plan early is going to ensure that the person's preferences are included in the plan and that the family will not need to make rash decisions, right? It's important to take the time to have these conversations, but we also recognize that they could be pretty scary, right? But they are necessary. So in the next video, Julie is going to tell us about how she talks with friends who ask her about having this kind of discussion with her mother.
Here's what I've come to after all of this. That it's the most loving and kind thing you can do for them is to be honest with them and say, this is like a really scary thing. And I feel a lot of discomfort bringing this up to you. But I tell them, if you're going to be the one who's going to take them on this journey, then you have to tell them, I'm going to be here on this journey with you. And there are things that we have to do to get this in place. We're going to go on this journey together. I've told you I'm going to be here with you till the end. So let's get this ready. It's like we're going to go on an ocean ship. We've got to get things packed up. We've got to figure out what we're taking with us. We got to get ready. And the things that we have to get ready, we have to make sure that we know which doctors you're going to be using. I need to get this signed, okay? So that if you go in there and they have to do surgery, for example, I got to have this durable power of attorney for healthcare for you. I have to have this worked out, okay? Now, if for some reason, okay, you need to go to rehab after something, I have to have these documents here, the financial stuff, so I can get these things taken care of for you while this is going on. I don't want to have anything get in the way of us being able to progress and keep doing this. I said, it seems hard because it's hard in our heads. Everybody's read about people who've stolen from elderly people, who've done these horrible things. But if you're the person who's approaching this with loving kindness and compassion, and you're willing to take this person on this journey, you're not doing a bad thing. You're doing the right thing by talking to them about it. And you approach it from the standpoint of, I'm here for you. I'm doing this for you. We're going to do this together. And I'm going to help you through this. And these are the tools that I need to make sure that we can do this.
Talking about these sensitive issues really, it's really uncomfortable, but in reality is the kind thing to do with someone with dementia, right? So as you may be, hearing me all throughout the program and in past programs, really our approach sets the tone, right? So you want to begin the conversation socially so that you're winning the person's trust first can often make a task much easier. And one way of doing this is to really just spend some time chatting with the person before approaching that conversation, that difficult conversation, right? So for example, you may want to spend 10 to 20 minutes talking about the weather, family members, or any topic that might be interesting to that person. And oftentimes, setting that tone, setting the stage makes it much easier for us to have these conversations. And you can also begin by explaining that you are in this together, right? So having these discussions may seem to go against some of our social norms and really represents the shift in the family dynamics, right? In the family roles. So you want to understand that having these conversations will help you and the person with dementia make the plans you will need to get the best care. And it will allow them to connect and enjoy their time together in the future. So it can be tremendously reassuring to let the person know that you will be a part of the process now and in the future. So this way the person you love can feel that you are on the same team. You can start by asking questions, gathering documents, right? You want to think of the conversation as an opportunity to ask questions rather than to tell the person something, right? So what documents are in place now and where are they kept, right? Who has copies of the documents and who should have copies? Who should review these documents? Family, professionals? You want to pull documents together and get the ones that need to be completed or altered, right? So you also want to allow plenty of time for the information to be absorbed. These conversations require a lot of patience, so you need to prepare yourself for these. You also want to explain that these are standard plans that need to be made as we get older, right? This may reduce resistance to the process by explaining that having these discussions and completing these documents are things that we all need to do as we age. And you want to break the conversation into parts, right? And try different times and locations. If you only have the conversation via phone, you may want to try to have it in person. You may also try to write a letter to get the conversation started, right? Don't feel you have to cover everything in one sitting. It may help to do the planning in smaller segments so you can address the person's finances one day and then talk about legal documents on another day. And you want to involve others to help talk about finances, right? So ask a financial advisor to help with the conversation or involve a brother or a sister. Some families make decisions to pool resources to ensure that care can be provided and the expenses are being paid. So it's important to understand the financial situation so your family can help you make the best long-term care choices. Just as having these difficult conversations is challenging, caring for someone with Alzheimer's disease is also a challenge, right? But there are steps that you can take to make things a bit easier for everyone involved. As our veteran caregivers tells us, no one can do this alone, right? Everyone who provides care for the person is part of a team. And care teams work best when there is good communication. So the first step is to begin the conversation by talking with other people on this care team. As with any team, your care team works best on when there is an open flow of communication and when decisions are made together. You, the person with dementia, and your other family members are the center of this team. And whether family members live near the person you're concerned about or far away, everyone can participate. So families typically look to their primary care doctors to help with making medical plans. Other medical professionals who specialize in the area of dementia care may be included to make a diagnosis, right? So once a diagnosis is made, find out who will coordinate care on an ongoing basis. And this is often the primary care physician. So your care team doesn't stop there, right? Peers can be a tremendous support to the core care team members. So as the disease progresses and care needs increase, friends can offer much needed breaks and emotional support. And if you have been a caregiver, you know how important that is. Everyone who is working and a member of the care team should contact their company's HR department or employee assistance program to ask about caregiving benefits. Families can then look at their pool of resources and make decisions about how to proceed. There are community resources available where you work and live. So some of them could be online. So your entire family can have access to information and support. And now, with the current situation, we know that, we have so much more available online. And of course, the Alzheimer's Association's Navigator is a tool that allows your family to create a personalized action plan to connect you to local resources. So you can always visit alz.org/Alzheimer's Navigator, and all the resources that you see on their screen, I will be putting links in the chat so that you are able to access them. Okay. And of course, remember that really that no one can provide all of this care alone. And the sooner in the disease process that you have these conversations, the more smoothly this team can function to provide assistance, right? So helping the person that you're concerned about begins with talking and having these difficult conversations. And on this slide, you can see our website, of course, alz.org, and our toll-free number, which is a 24/7, 365 days helpline number that you can call or contact us at any time. And we are here to help you, your family, and anyone really who is affected by Alzheimer's or any other form of dementia. So please feel free to call 1-800-272-3900.
Hi, everyone. This is Z from Yonkers Public Library. Thanks so much to Sally Pinto and Alexis and Barbara from Newark. Thank you to our community partners, WJCS, the City of Yonkers Office for the Aging, Westchester County Legislator Ruth Walter, Friends of Crestwood Library, and Yonkers Public Library for making this phenomenal partnership. And we thank each and every one of you for being part of our wellness community. Be well, stay well.